If you started the new year off thinking this is the year that I lose weight and you've already kicked it off with the salads, but you're starting to feel starving and, well, bored, then this is the episode of Body Beyond the Scales for you. Welcome back to the podcast that helps you get stronger and more confident in your body through building better habits. I'm going to be breaking down exactly how you can lose weight in a sustainable way without eating sad salads all the time and without feeling like you're really even on a diet. And if you're new around here, then hi, I'm Holly and I'm here to help you lose weight and keep it off in a sustainable way. So if you want to listen to more of that kind of content, then you should drop me a follow or a subscribe on whatever platform you are currently listening to this on. And without further ado, let's get cracking with the episode. Now, if you want to lose weight, most people start January off on some sort of diet, but there are a few problems with most conventional diets. The main one being that they're too restrictive. You end up cutting out a certain food group or a certain type of foods, but that only leaves you wanting it more. You cut out carbs, you end up craving carbs. You cut out chocolate, you end up craving chocolate. It's a surefire way to increase the amount of food noise that you're getting about something without actually making it much easier to lose weight. And eventually your willpower will drop and, well, you're going to end up eating all that chocolate. The next issue with most diets is that they help you lose weight quickly. Now, there's nothing wrong with losing weight quickly or slowly, but if you lose weight quickly by being too restrictive, you end up making changes that you actually can't stick to for the long term. So whilst the weight comes off, you don't end up being consistent with it, and then the weight ends up coming back on, but you think, well, that works last time, and you end up going back to that same technique. And that's how you end up stuck in the yo-yo dieting cycle. You often also end up blaming yourself, meaning that you reduce the amount of confidence that you've got in yourself to actually be successful with dieting, which leaves you feeling like rubbish and actually just even more stuck in the dieting cycle. And the final problem with most diets is that you end up changing too much. You end up going from 0 to 100 and completely overhauling your life, but there's a reason that you have your current habits in place. The current habits that you have are serving you in some way. So if you go to completely overhaul your life, all of a sudden you've got a lot of things to do that aren't really that helpful in your day-to-day life. So you're just going to end up reverting back to those original behaviours. So instead of being super restrictive or making changes that are just simply not going to last, instead we're going to focus on making small sustainable changes that you can add into your life that will make it actively better without leaving you overwhelmed. So let's get cracking. First off, how to lose weight 101. To lose weight, you need to be in a calorie deficit. That's where calories in are lower than calories out. Now, in a pound of fat, there are 3,500 calories. That means that if there are 7 days in a week and we divide that 3,500 by 7, you get 500. Now, that means for most people, they want to be in around about a 500 calorie deficit per day in order to lose weight. Or rather, to lose a pound a week. Now, this is a really crude idea. However, if you are in a bigger body, you might be able to go a little bit faster. And if you are in a smaller body, it's probably going to be advised that you go a little bit slower. So the 500 calorie deficit isn't a hard and fast rule. It's just whatever works best with your life. Now, in order to know if the calories that you're currently eating are working, you're going to want to track your weight. Now, unlike what most slimming groups recommend, where you end up weighing yourself on a Wednesday night in the middle of a church hall, I'm going to recommend that you actually weigh yourself daily. First thing in the morning, after you've been for a wee, after you've whipped your kit off, and before you've eaten or drank anything. Repeat that every single day, and I want you to jot down those measurements and start tracking the trend. We're not going to be bothered about those individual measurements. We're going to be looking at what the overall trend is saying to us. So if the trend is moving down, you're losing weight, and if the trend is going up, well, you're gaining weight. And if the trend is staying roughly about the same, then you're maintaining. It's like the Grand Old Duke of York. So you're going to track those averages, and if it's going down after 2 to 3 weeks, you know that you're on the right track. If it's going up, then you want to make some adjustments, and if it's staying the same, then you want to make some adjustments. But that is the premise. That is how you lose weight. There are no magic tricks. There is no hormonal issues. It literally just comes down to calories in versus calories out. Now, whether you want to track calories or not, your body is still tracking. So it is really important to recognize that those calories are fundamentally what is going to help you lose weight. Even if you don't want to track calories, the habits that I'm going to talk through are going to be super useful. And if you are tracking calories, stick to these habits as well. Don't think that just tracking calories is enough to get by on. So let's talk through a few different tracking apps. Now, whenever I've tracked calories, the main ones that I've used have literally been MyFitnessPal. And I have also used Fitbit as well. Now, I haven't used anything other than these two for probably about 5 years, but I have had clients who've used NutriCheck and they found that really useful. And of course, there are other calorie tracking apps available. Now, more recently, AI tracking apps have come onto the scene. You take a photo of your meal and it suggests how many calories are in that meal. The accuracy of these is hit and miss. What I would recommend is you stick to the traditional methods of tracking for the time being. So when you track, I want you to think, I'm making Holly a recipe. I want to be able to make exactly what you've got on your plate right now. So say you're making a ham sandwich, I want to know exactly what condiments you've got on there. I want to know if you've got any spread on your bread. I want to know what type of bread that you've used. I want to know what type of ham you've used. Was it the premium quality stuff or was it Tesco's wafer thin? What have you made? And the more specific that you can get, the better. With that recipe, I want you to give me as much detail as possible. I want to know how many slices of ham are in there. I want to know how many grams of butter that you have used. All of these things are useful because it will tell you how many calories you have actually eaten. A lot of the time we end up just guessing, and that doesn't give us any accuracy, and then that means that the calories end up out, and that means that, well, there's not that much point to tracking if the accuracy isn't there. So if we want it to be a useful tool, weigh things out and get as accurate and specific as you can do. Now, the best time to track is before you've eaten the meal or immediately as you're cooking it. That's because, well, memory recall is not actually that good, and if you're tracking at the end of the day and trying to remember how many grams of porridge oats you put into your breakfast bowl this morning, well, it's just not going to be that specific, is it? And then if we're trying to remember that plus how much ketchup you put on your fish finger sandwich that you had for lunch and whatever else you've eaten during the day, it's just going to be coming up a little bit short. So pre-tracking and then adjusting at the time, or just tracking it at the time, is one of the most useful things that you can do for improving that accuracy. Now, let's talk about what food habits to focus on, whether you're tracking or not. The first habit to focus on is planning your food out ahead of time. If you're trying to make decisions when you're in the moment, you're going to make more hunger-based decisions or emotional-based decisions, which often don't lead to the best quality of food. So instead, planning your food out in advance makes it much easier to make a better quality decision around your food. Next up, I want you to split your calories as evenly as possible throughout the day. Even if you're not tracking, you can still split the size of your meals as evenly as possible throughout the day. This is going to make it a lot easier for you to stay stable throughout the day. I've said throughout the day far too many times here. This is going to make it a lot easier for you to stay more stable throughout the day and not have any big peaks in hunger and big troughs in hunger. Now, I also want you to eat in a repeatable eating structure, something like 3 meals and 1 snack. Eat these as close to the same time every single day that you possibly can. And that's going to help make food predictable for both you and your body. Now, at each mealtime, I want you to think about building your plate. A quarter of your plate wants to be protein, half of your plate wants to be fruit, veg or salad, and a quarter of your plate wants to be carbohydrates. Yes, fat is an important food group, however, you will get some of that in within the other components of your food. Now, the 2 things on your plate that are going to help you stay full are going to be protein and plants. These are really useful foods to eat that will help you eat a high volume of food for fewer calories. And they will help promote feelings of fullness. So making sure you get these 2 things on your plate first is super, super useful if you are 1, trying to lose weight, but 2, trying to keep it off as well. Finally, at each mealtime, I want you to eat until you are 80% full. For the most part, eating until you are 100% full, in about 20 minutes time, you are going to feel overly full. Whereas at 80% fullness, in about 20 minutes time, you're probably going to feel about 100% full because your brain and your stomach need a little bit of time to communicate. So eating until 80% fullness just means that you are able to actually understand those hunger cues a little bit better. Speaking of hunger cues, it's really important to understand the difference between hunger and a craving. Now, hunger, you would eat anything, whereas a craving, you probably want something specific, like you want chocolate or you want something salty. In the event that you're hungry, you're going to want to prioritise getting some protein and plants on your plate. In the event that you have a craving, get curious around what's going on, what's causing that craving. And will the biscuit solve the craving, or do you actually need to do something else? 2 episodes ago on Body Beyond the Scales, I actually did an episode on how to ditch the food cravings. So if you want to know more about this, then check that episode out. If you choose to track calories, but somebody else is doing the cooking, either all the time or some of the time, then it's really important that you have an open conversation with them about how they can facilitate you achieving your goals. When I was living at home, my mum was the one who did the majority of the cooking. And that meant, therefore, that she would be cooking my meal and I wouldn't be able to track with 100% accuracy. But what I would do is I would go be involved in the cooking process. So I would go chat to her while she was making dinner and I would scan the packets of things, and she knew to keep the packets to the side so that I could scan them. All it required was me having that conversation with her just to say, can actually you help me out with this? And she did. It was literally no skin off her back, and it meant that I could actually stick to my goals in a way that felt good for me. I think a lot of the time people shut this down immediately, but actually just asking someone for help is usually quite helpful. Now, just before we go any further, I'd like to just comment on the idea of disordered eating / eating disorders and tracking calories. There seems to be this preconception online that if you track calories, you are therefore have an eating disorder or it's going to lead to an eating disorder. This is not the case. Tracking calories is just a tool. Getting mad at calories or getting mad at tracking calories is like getting mad at a centimetre and a ruler. It just kind of doesn't make sense. What is an issue, however, is if you have a poor relationship with food and tracking ends up facilitating or like making worse that relationship with food. But it's the relationship with food that needs to be addressed. Maybe it's not the tool that's the issue. If there is anything that you are concerned about with your relationship with food, then speak to your GP about it first off. But if you want to make sure that you end up with a healthy relationship with food whilst tracking calories, then really focus on an inclusive approach to food. So here's where we want to think about adding foods in, basically what I've been talking about so far. So rather than having that restrictive mindset, we want to think about how we can add foods into your life. How can we add in more fruits and vegetables? How can we add in more protein? If you cut out specific foods, you're going to make your relationship with food harder. And have regular check-ins with yourself. How are you feeling with your relationship with food? If you're feeling like it's getting a little bit dicey, then just ask yourself, what's going on? Why are you feeling like this? Is there anything in particular that's making you feel restricted? And then addressing that. But tracking calories doesn't lead to disordered eating. It's not a straight line. Now, if you have any questions on how to improve your nutrition, feel free to drop me a message on Instagram. That's probably the best place to get me. And I can help answer them for you in a little bit more detail if you've got any questions on that. But if you are trying to lose weight in 2025, nutrition isn't the only thing that you need to think about. You're going to want to think about building the right habits that will going to help you lose weight and keep it off. That's why I created the Healthy Habits quiz. It's literally a 90-second quiz that you can take and will give you exactly the habits that you want to start working on straight away. I'll pop the link in the show notes down below. And I hope that you have enjoyed this episode of Body Beyond the Scales, and I will catch you in the next one.